What's good, everyone? I am Manara, and welcome to my channel. Without further ado, this is part 2 of Return of the Mack. He pressed his long, white forefinger to the brand on Wormtail's arm. The scar on Harry's forehead seared with a sharp pain again, and Wormtail let out a fresh howl. Voldemort removed his fingers from Wormtail's mark, and Harry saw that it turned jet black. A look of cool satisfaction on his face, Voldemort straightened up, threw back his head, and stared around at the dark graveyard. How many will be brave enough to return when they feel it? He whispered. He began to pace up and down before Harry and Wormtail, eyes sweeping the graveyard all the while. After a minute or so, he looked down at Harry again, a cruel smile twisting his snake-like face. You stand, Harry Potter, upon the remains of my late father, he hissed softly. A muggle and a fool, very like your dear mother. But they both had their uses, did they not? Your mother died to defend you as a child, and I killed my father, and see how useful he has proved himself in death. Voldemort laughed again. Up and down he paced, looking all around him as he walked, and the snake continued to circle in the grass. You see that house upon the hillside, Potter? My father lived there. My mother, a witch who lived here in this village, fell in love with him. But he abandoned her when she told him what she was. He didn't like magic, my father. He left her and returned to his muggle parents before I was even born, Potter. And she died, giving birth to me, leaving me to be raised in a muggle orphanage. But I vowed to find him. I revenged myself upon him, that fool who gave me his name, Tom Riddle. Still he paced, his red eyes darting from grave to grave. Listen to me, reliving family history, he said quietly. Why, I am growing quite sentimental. But look, Harry, my true family returns. The air was suddenly full of the swishing of cloaks. Between graves, behind the yew tree, in every shadowy space, wizards were apparating. All of them were hooded and masked, and one by one they moved forward, slowly, cautiously, as though they could hardly believe their eyes. Voldemort stood in silence, waiting for them. Then one of the Death Eaters fell to his knees, crawled towards Voldemort, and kissed the hem of his black robes. The Death Eaters behind him did the same, each of them approaching Voldemort, on his knees and kissing his robes before backing away and standing up, forming a silent circle, which enclosed Tom Riddle's grave, Harry, Voldemort, and the sobbing and twitching hip that was Wormtail. Yet they left gaps in the circle, as though waiting for more people. Voldemort, however, did not seem to expect more. He looked around at the hooded faces, and though there was no wind, a rustling seemed to run around the circle, as though it had shivered. "Welcome, Death Eaters," said Voldemort quietly. 13 years since last we met, yet you answer my call as though it were yesterday. We are still united under the dark mark then, or are we? He put back his terrible face and sniffed, his slit-like nostrils widening. "I smell guilt," he said. "There is a stench of guilt upon the air." A second shiver ran around the circle, as though each member of it longed, but did not dare to step back from him. "I see you all, whole and healthy, with your powers intact. Such prompt appearances. And I ask myself, why did this band of wizards never come to the aid of their master, to whom they swore eternal loyalty?" No one spoke. No one moved except Wormtail, who was upon the ground, still sobbing over his bleeding. "And I answer myself," whispered Voldemort. "They must have believed me broken, a thought I was gone, they slipped back among my enemies, and they pleaded innocence and ignorance and bewitchment. And then I ask myself, but how could they believe I would not rise again? They who knew the steps I took long ago to guard myself against mortal death. They who have seen proofs of the immensity of my power in the times when I was mightier than any wizard living. And I answer myself, perhaps they believed a still greater power could exist, one that could vanquish even Lord Voldemort. Perhaps they now pay allegiance to another. Perhaps that champion of commoners, of mudbloods and muggles, Albus Dumbledore. At the mention of Dumbledore's name, the members of the circle stirred, and some muttered and shook their heads. Voldemort ignored them. It is a disappointment to me. I must confess myself disappointed. One of the men suddenly flung himself forward, breaking the circle, trembling from head to foot. He collapsed at Voldemort's feet. "Master!" he shrieked. "Master, forgive me! Forgive us all!" Voldemort began to laugh. He raised his wand. Crucio! The Death Eater on the ground writhed and shrieked. Harry was sure the sound must carry to the houses around. Let the police come, he thought desperately. Anyone, anything. Voldemort raised his wand. The tortured Death Eater lay flat upon the ground, gasping. "Get up, Avery," said Voldemort softly. "Stand up. You ask for forgiveness. I do not forgive. I do not forget. 13 long years. I want 13 years repayment before I forgive you. Wormtail here has paid some of his debt already. Have you not, Wormtail?" He looked down at Wormtail, who continued to sob. "You returned to me not out of loyalty, but out of fear of your old friends. You deserve this pain, Wormtail. You know that, don't you? Yes, Master, moaned Wormtail. Please, Master, please. Yet you helped return me to my body, said Voldemort coolly, watching Wormtail sob on the ground. Worthless and treacherous as you are, you helped me, and Lord Voldemort rewards his helpers. Voldemort raised his wand again and whirled it through the air. A streak of what looked like molten silver hung shining in the wand's wake. Momentarily shapeless, it writhed and then formed itself into a gleaming replica of a human hand, bright as moonlight, which soared downward and fixed itself upon Wormtail's bleeding wrist. Wormtail, sobbing, stopped abruptly. His breath, harsh and ragged, he raised his head and stared in disbelief at the silver hand now attached seamlessly to his arm, as though he were wearing a dazzling glove. He flexed the shining fingers and then, trembling, picked up a small twig on the ground and crushed it into powder. My lord, he whispered. Master, it is beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. He scrambled forward on his knees and kissed the hem of Voldemort's robes. May your loyalty never waver again, Wormtail, said Voldemort. No, my lord, never, my lord. Wormtail stood up and took his place in the circle, staring at his powerful new hand, his face still shining with tears. We've come to the end of our story. I hope you enjoyed. Till next time, sweet dreams.